During Sunday school, there we go. I'm not the more important one for you to be able to hear right now. But just a quick word. Again, we're excited this morning to have Mike Riddle with us. He's been here Friday night, Saturday, yesterday morning, had 2 sessions with him. And if you were not able to be here for those sessions, just so you're aware, they are available for you to watch on our website. So you can just go to fremontalliance.net and click on the watch button, and that will take you there, and you can click on the various days that we had, the seminars. And so anyways, they are available to you. A reminder that I did see the offering plate going around for Sunday school. If that's still going around, just make sure that you are aware of that. But I'm going to step out of the way real quickly. So I'm going to have a word of prayer, and then Brother Mike's going to come up. He's going to share with us this morning about God's amazing creation. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we do thank you so much for the beauty of your creation. And yesterday, seeing the sunny skies and the blue sky and the sunshine, and this morning the rain, and just a reminder that you put all of it together, and it works so beautifully. And Father, thank you for the opportunity that we have to come together in your house to worship you and to hear from you, from your word. And Lord, I thank you for our brother Mike. Thank you that he is not only a man of science, but he is a man of your word. And so, Lord, as he speaks to us, I pray that your Spirit will open our ears, and so that we can hear and understand. And, Lord, equip us. Give us tools that we can share the truth of your word with others. We ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
See if my wallet's there. I know these preachers. Yes. Anyway, thank you for coming out this morning. If you've been here by 5 a.m., you'd have beat the rain. Man, we're going to do a little talk called God's Amazing Creation. Talk about some very interesting creatures here. Let's see if we can get that pointed just right. It'll get more amazing once this works. It's working behind me? Okay. Oh, we're going back. Now we see if we can back up. There we go. There's God's amazing creation. Well, you already saw the first part, so any questions? Anyway, we're going to talk about some very interesting creatures, too, here. I want to start with God's amazing creation with the stars. Tells us he made the stars also. I love that verse in there because there's quintillions of stars out there, and it just says, and he made the stars also. It was so simple for him. So let's start here. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. That's amazing. Think how big our sun is compared to the earth. It's a tiny star compared to some of the great big ones. And he just made them all in a day. But the problem is, many Christians don't believe this. They believe that God used millions of years and stars evolved over those millions and billions of years. They simply do not believe the opening chapter of the Bible. The origin of stars. Here's an earth science geology textbook. All stars form in much the same manner as the sun did. The formation of a star begins with a cloud of interstellar gas and dust called a nebula. That's a fancy term for gas and dust, which collapses on itself, and as a result of its own gravity, the condensed object will become a new star. Wow. How about we ask an astronomer here? I don't think anyone has ever observed a star turning on like a switch that has flicked. Well, that's very interesting, because no one has ever seen a star form. And he's going to tell you why. Even though star formation can happen quite quickly compared to other astronomical events, and he goes on to say it takes hundreds of thousands of years for a star to form. So no one's ever seen a star form. Okay? Now, here's the popular idea. We get these great big gas and dust clouds called nebulae. And they rotate around and around and around. And as they rotate around, they gravitationally collapse inward and form a brand new star. Where there is a technical term for that whole process. It is called baloney. That does not happen. And we can measure that over and over again in laboratory tests. As the gas and dust cloud begins to collapse inward due to the gravitational rotation, it generates heat pressure. And that heat pressure is always stronger than the gravity and always causes that cloud to expand outward. That is observable science. So where did all the stars come from then? Well, read the Bible. He made the stars also. There's no known way we have for making stars form. John Hartnett, PhD in physics. Without something else, the outward pressure due to kinetic energy of the gas molecule in the cloud is so much greater than the inward pressure. That's just what we said. The pressure is stronger than the gravity. It will always cause that cloud to expand outward rather than collapse. Jason Lau, PhD in astrophysics. Gas in space is very resistant to being compressed into a star. Compression of gas causes an increase in the magnetic field, which causes the gas pressure to move outward, the same as the angular momentum. So we got angular momentum causing it to move out, we have the gas pressure causing it to move out, and we have the magnetic field causing it to come apart. So where do the stars come from? Read the Bible. Abraham Loeb, Harvard Center for Astrophysics. The truth is, we don't understand star formation at a fundamental level, and he's not a believer. But yet, what are our textbooks teaching? False information. They're teaching stars are forming all the time. No, they're not. They're indoctrinating our children into a non-biblical belief system called evolutionism. Let's take a look at the stars here, what God has done. Our Milky Way has about 200 billion stars. That's an estimate, about 200 billion stars. That's about 14.5 stars, new stars every year. That would last for the age of the universe. Now, anybody like large numbers? Anybody like big numbers here? Yeah, let's look at some big numbers. There's some big numbers. 10 to the second just means 1 followed by 2 zeros. 10 to the 24th means 1 followed by 24 zeros. Those are some large numbers. The estimated age of the universe is about 13.8 billion years, and that's in question now. They're looking at doubling that age. So we've been taught that as a fact for a long time. Now they're looking at changing again. But our universe, estimated number of stars, for those of you who like mathematics, is 70 times 10 to the 22nd. Does that mean anything to anybody in here? Yeah, you've got to go back and take your math. Well, that's what it looks like. That's a good term for it. That's a good scientific term for that one. That's the estimated number of stars in our universe. And you know what the Bible says? And he made the stars also. That is 5 trillion new stars forming every year for 13.8 billion years, and we can't even observe one forming. The evolution model falls apart right there. It does not agree with science, and it does not agree with God's word. Or 2.4 million stars every second have to form, and we can't see one. Psalm 33, 6 and 9. By the word of the Lord, the heavens were made, and the host of them by the breath of his mouth. For he spoke, and it was done. He commanded, it stood fast. There's professors in these so-called Christian universities that come off and say, oh, God didn't tell us. The Bible doesn't tell us how God created. Therefore, it's open to interpretation. My answer to that is read the Bible. What does it say right here in Psalm 33, 6 and 9? He's spoken into existence by his great power. He can do that. We can't. We need Legos to start with. Isaiah 40, 26. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things, who brings out their host by number. Revelation 4:11. You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. Why? For you created all things, and by your will they existed and were created. You know why the host of heaven is bowing down and honoring our Lord God? Because he's the creator. That means creation is a very important topic, because once you get there, you're going to be bowing down and singing this kind of a song to our Creator. Now, how about some amazing creatures that defy evolution? How about this one out of the Bible? Out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. What does that sound like? A dragon right there in the Bible. Has anybody really seen a real fire-breathing dragon anywhere? The devil. I like these answers. He's right. So, have we found a problem with the Bible here talking about fire-breathing dragons? Well, not so. You know, right here in this country, and specifically California, they have a lot of stuff there. There's a dragon-like creature that lives, shoots out sparks of fire. Now, does a dragon have to be as big as this room to shoot out sparks of fire? How about this big? Could a dragon be this big, shoot out sparks of fire? How about this big? Would anybody be afraid of a dragon this big? You step on it. Okay. I would too. Well, it's called the bombardier beetle. This beetle's about a ½ inch long and literally shoots out sparks of fire. Well, let's talk about how it does this. It's got 2 storage tanks in there. One has some chemicals in it called hydroquinone hydrogen peroxide, and the other chemical has some other inhibitors in there. Open the door between those 2 storage tanks, get them all mixed together, hits oxygen, 212 degrees liquid fire come out of there. Let's take a look at this creature here. Sparks of fire coming out of this creature. 212 degrees boiling. That's hot. I don't want my finger in the way. There's some other pictures of this bombardier beetle. Now, how does it do this? Well, how did it get all these things in the first place? Well, let's go back in time for just a little bit. Because if evolution is true, this beetle didn't start that way. It had to evolve all this. Well, let's start with the bombardier beetle. Before it has any defense mechanism, and all the frogs are coming along, eating up all, this is my frog, that's my beetle, eating up all the beetles. That's the best they can do. But one of them survives and says, well, I better learn how to protect myself. That's how evolution works, folks. I better learn how to protect myself. I'm going to get some chemicals. And this beetle is so smart, it never even took a chemistry class, and it got the right chemicals. Isn't this an amazing creature? Well, it's got all the chemicals in there now, but it doesn't have any way to separate them. And you know what happens when they all get together in there and they're not separated? They're all going poof, 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 and they're all blown up, and they're all dead. You know what we know about dead things? They don't evolve, do they? But maybe one of them survives. Well, gee, I better separate these chemicals. I'm going to build some storage tanks. It's an amazing smart beetle. Never even watched Bob the Builder and knew how to build these storage tanks. So very smart beetle. I do too. That's how I learned how to build things. We got these storage tanks now. Now we have the chemicals in there. And here comes that frog again. And the beetle opens up the door between those 2 storage tanks and shoves the chemicals in. But this beetle hasn't learned how to close the door yet. So now we have the explosion going out both ends. They've just blown their heads off. They're all dead. You know what we know about dead things? They don't evolve, do they? But maybe one of them survives. Got it all figured out now. Here comes that frog again, opens up the door, shoves the chemicals in, closes that door, and shoots out 212 degrees liquid fire. But this creature's an insect. It means it has 6 legs. Guess what happens if it doesn't know where its legs are? It just shot its legs off. It can't escape. And they're all getting eaten up by the frogs again. Yes. See, all this has to be there from the beginning. All the information how to do this has to be there from the beginning, or it will not happen. An amazing creature. Now, if a little bitty beetle can shoot out 212 degrees liquid fire, isn't it also possible a creature in the past called Leviathan could do the same thing? See, if you say no, you're being anti-scientific now, because we know it can happen. We can always trust the Bible from beginning to end. So, perfect design by our Creator. How about a giraffe? How many have seen giraffes? Very majestic creature as they walk along. They're amazing creatures. Yes, they are very large. Some can get up to almost 18 feet tall. Very majestic. Now, we have a brain right about there, don't we? And we have a heart right about here. It's about a foot. Now, these giraffes have about a neck about 6 feet long. Now, what's our heart do? Pumps blood, so we get oxygen to the brain and everywhere else in the body. But something's working against that blood to get to our head. What is that? Gravity, right. But think about this giraffe now. It's got a 6 foot long neck. So it needs a little bit bigger heart to pump that blood 6 feet up against gravity. Some of these giraffes have a heart 2 feet in size. It is a huge heart, pumping tremendous pressure, because if that giraffe doesn't get oxygen to its brain, guess what happens to it? Yes, it becomes extinct. That's a polite word for dead. So they have a very large heart. Now, this giraffe's down there getting a drink of water. Interesting. Spreads its legs out, puts its head way down below its heart. Now, get this now. Its head is below its heart. The heart is still pumping tremendous pressure, but now it's not going against gravity, it's going with gravity. So why doesn't that giraffe's head pop off? The pressure should just pop its head off every time it gets a drink of water. Well, it's been designed to do what it does, and it does it very well. All up and down its neck, it's got a series of valves and tissues that block the blood flow while it's getting the drink of water. Isn't that an amazing design? If that wasn't there to begin with, we'd have giraffes running around with no heads. That just doesn't work. But now we have another situation. While that giraffe's down there getting that long drink of water, it's not getting any blood and oxygen to its brain. So how does it survive this? Well, God's design is always perfect. Right underneath its brain, it's got a spongy material that captures the last blood flow, so it continues to get blood and oxygen to the brain while it's getting a drink of water. Isn't that an amazing design by God, the giraffe? This could not have evolved. Perfect design. Now, woodpeckers. Those are the creatures that start up in by your bedroom window about 5 a.m. in the morning. I used to use tennis balls to scare them off. Yes. Woodpeckers. Now, there's different varieties of woodpeckers. But you know what a woodpecker does for a living? Basically bangs his head against a tree, doesn't it, with that long beak. How would you like to do that? Well, some of these woodpeckers, they can hit that tree almost 4 to 5 times a second. That is tremendous pressure going on. And some of these woodpeckers have a very long tongue. That tongue is so long, it cannot even fit in its beak. It'd be like us having a tongue this long. What would you do with the tongue this long? Well, you'd let it sit outside your mouth and drool on your pillow all night, wouldn't you? So what does a woodpecker do with a tongue that is too long to fit in its beak? Well, first of all, let's see what it does with that long tongue. It puts it way into that tree to grab all those yummy insects. If you were an insect, would you jump on that woodpecker's tongue? No. So how does it keep it on its tongue? Doesn't have any glue, no Velcro. It's got little stiff barbels or hairs like this that capture the insect. How'd you like to have a very hairy tongue? You had to comb every morning. And just to make sure they stay on there, it's got this gluey, sticky substance that makes sure they stay on there. How would you like to have a gluey, sticky, hairy tongue? You have to not only comb it, you have to shampoo it now and then. But that's how this does it. But we still have a situation to solve. This long tongue, what does it do with it? Well, I'm going to give you some choices, and we're going to take a vote here. Well, maybe just lets it hang out the side of its mouth while it's flying around and capture a few flying insects. That's one choice. Or maybe it rolls it all up like this and stuffs it into its beak, like a chipmunk cheeks. Or maybe it just brings it down into its throat, down through it, into its stomach area and keeps it safe there. Or we'll get a fourth one here. Maybe what it does, it brings it in, wraps it all around the back of the skull, and anchors into its nose. Okay. Got to come up with a fourth one. How many vote for number one? It just lets it hang out the side of it. Incidentally, if you don't vote, it's an automatic 20 push-ups. Fear and intimidation works well. Anybody vote for number 1? Lets it hang out its mouth. How about number 2? It rolls it all up and stuffs it in its beak. Okay, you're just voting out of fear now, aren't you? Okay. How about number 3? It brings it down into its stomach area. Okay. Anybody vote for number 4? Wraps it around the back of its skull, anchors into its tongue. Well, that is the correct one, number 4. Because remember how hard that woodpecker hits that tree? It's got to have some cushion to protect its skull too, doesn't it? Isn't this an amazing design that God has done so a woodpecker can do what it does, and it does it very well? Don't be trying to put your tongue around the back of your skull. It doesn't work. And don't try and put it in your nose either. Okay, that's a woodpecker. Now, let's talk about the cell for the use of you who like biology. That's one of the most current images of a part of a cell. There's no such thing as a simple cell. This cell is more complex than any machine mankind's ever made. And you got about 60 trillion of these in your body. That's an amazing picture. That's the best pictures we now have of a living cell. That is a very complicated manufacturing environment in there. Beats anything we've ever done. Does more complex than any computer we have ever designed. One single human cell. Now, here's some of the cell. Anybody like biological terms? Okay, this is going to be for you. There we go. There's just some of the parts of a cell. There's hundreds more. And all these things are working together constantly just while you're sitting there. Incidentally, just while you're sitting there, thousands and thousands of your cells are dying and being replaced every second. So you're working pretty hard just sitting there right now. Those are just some of the parts that make up a cell. I'm going to talk about one of them, something called a protein. How many like to eat proteins? Yeah, plants and meat, yeah. We do like to eat our proteins. Without them, you're not going to survive. Well, let's take a look at the protein. You have thousands of these proteins in every cell. Thousands of them in every cell. That's kind of an idea of what a protein looks like. It's very folded, like a three-dimensional folding all the way through there. And that protein has to fold just the right way or it doesn't function right. So something has to know how to fold that protein the correct way. And proteins are made up of things called amino acids. And all these amino acids bond together, link together, to make a protein. And if you get a wrong amino acid in there, it can cause that protein to fold the wrong way, and it doesn't work right anymore. It can even cause diseases. Now, quick review of biological terms. The reason I'm going to do this, because it looks like some of you have been out of the biology classroom for maybe a year or two. So we'll start with the atom, our basic unit of matter. Now, what do atoms like to do? Well, they like to bond together to make things called molecules, like H2O. And molecules sometimes will bond together to make amino acids, and amino acids will bond together sometimes to make proteins. And that's all we need to know. This chart right here is going to be enough to destroy the entire Darwinian evolution model. How's that sound? You don't need to go anywhere else. Just what we're going to look at here is enough to destroy the entire evolution model. Darwin, it shows Darwin, his whole model is based on faith. So this can be a very important couple slides. And we're going to keep it really easy. There's a picture in our textbooks still that happened in the 1950s called the Miller experiment. It's still in there. In the 1950s, Miller set out to create the building blocks of life. And it wasn't trying to create life, trying to get the building blocks, in other words, amino acids. That's what you want to get. Because if you don't get amino acids, you can't have life. So he wanted to see if we can create amino acids on our own. So he built this spark chamber in his laboratory, and he put certain gases like methane and ammonia in there, which he believed the early Earth was made out of. And he left oxygen out because he believed the early Earth didn't have oxygen. We'll see why on that. Then he generated electrical sparks in there to drive the chemical reactions. And then it goes on to say he got amino acids. And folks, that is a fact. Miller did get amino acids. So why do we need a creator God when we can do it ourselves? And that's what our youth are being taught. And if we don't combat that and teach them the truth, you're going to lose your children. Almost guaranteed you will lose your children, because over 60% are walking away from the church today because they weren't taught. Okay. Now, here's the problem. Miller left oxygen out of the experiment because he was a very smart man. Miller was very smart. He knew, as we know today, that in the presence of oxygen, amino acids will not bond together. Because oxygen is like a corrosive at that level. At the molecular level, it's like a corrosive. Just destroys chemical bonds. So life could never get started if there was oxygen in the atmosphere. So he just believed that there was no oxygen when this earth began. Incidentally, all the latest scientific evidence clearly shows this earth has always had oxygen. And we can find that in the rocks, the oxidation. Even the rocks, the evolutionists say, are billions of years old. We find signs of oxidation there. They're not billions of years old, incidentally. They can't be. The earth is only 6,000 years old. Dwayne Gish, an atmosphere containing free oxygen would be fatal to all origin of life schemes. While oxygen is necessary for life, free oxygen would oxidize and thus destroy all organic material. Wow. So the scientists know this. This is a common knowledge. Life cannot start in oxygen. So let's do this. Let's play the evolutionary game. Let's take all the oxygen out of the atmosphere. And if we take all the oxygen out, we have to take something else out that surrounds this planet, starts with an O and has a Z in it, called the ozone. It's made of oxygen, O3, protects us. And if you take all the oxygen away, you have to take the ozone away. You know what that does to all life? Turns it into crispy critters. That's the technical term for dead. Life cannot start in the presence of oxygen, and it cannot start without oxygen. That's looking pretty good, isn't it? What do the evolutionists do now? Well, the next story is life didn't start on land. It started way down deep in the oceans. So far down, the sun's rays could not penetrate. And I love it when people make that statement, that life started in the oceans. Because I'll bring up a word called hydrolysis. Hydro means water. Hydrolysis literally means water splitting. As soon as any amino acids might have formed, with a matter of just weeks, all the amino acids would have been destroyed because water breaks up molecular bonds. So why don't you break up when you take a shower? Because you have something around your cell. Anybody know what that thing is called? A membrane. That's a cell wall. That's what you're going to say, wasn't it? I knew you knew that. I can see the brain waves coming out. Cell wall or cell membrane. Take that cell wall off, folks. The next time you take a shower, you're going down the drain. So isn't it amazing how God has designed those cells? All those components in there would just come apart. But he surrounded it with a cell wall to protect everything. So life cannot start with oxygen, cannot start without oxygen, and it can't start in water. Water is one of the worst places in the entire universe for life to begin. So what are they going to do now? Well, we have to look at this. Scientists, all the way back to Miller, did create amino acids. That is a fact. He created amino acids in his laboratory. So let's look at this. Amino acids. There are hundreds and hundreds of different types of amino acids, but only 20 of those are used in life. So life is very selective. You get one of these wrong amino acids in you, it could cause the protein to fold the wrong way, and it might even kill you. Some might not do anything, some might cause devastating diseases. So you can only have those 20. So somewhere along the line, as the body is selecting these amino acids, it's got to have enough knowledge or information to select only of those 20 of all the other kind of amino acids that are out there. So some information has to be in your body already to do that correctly. Now, amino acids come in two shapes. Just like we have a left hand and right hand. The left and right hand are about the same, aren't they? 4 fingers and a thumb. But are they really the same? Because look what happens when I put one hand behind the other. Thumb and fingers on the opposite side, aren't they? See, your left and right hand are what we call mirror images of each other. Mirror images. Now, as amino acids come in the same shape, and we keep it simple, we call them left-handed amino acids and right-handed amino acids. What's the difference? Well, just like our hands, they're made up of the same atoms. And just like our hands, they are mirror images of each other. Now, why is that so important? This is important because every amino acid in every protein in your body, and you have trillions of these, is left-handed. You do not have a right-handed amino acid in any protein in your body. In fact, every life, plant and animal, 100% left-handed amino acids in the proteins. Now, why is that so important? Well, it's important because what they don't tell our youth in the textbooks. In the textbooks, they go on to say he got amino acids. But what Miller got was an even mixture of 50% left-handed, 50% right-handed. Folks, that is a poison to life. His whole experiment was a failure. But see, our textbooks, our schools won't teach that. Why? Because they would rather indoctrinate children rather than really teach them. Public schools are basically a dangerous place to go. And unfortunately, I can say that about some of our Christian universities too. Dangerous places to be. Because they do teach wrong information about the Bible over and over. Now, every experiment we've ever done always ends up with about a mixture of 50% left-handed, 50% right-handed. The natural tendency, in other words, is always away from life, never towards life. And it gets better. When we die and we become as dead as we can be, and that will be pretty dead, you know what happens to our 100% left-handed amino acids? They go back to a mixture of left and right-handed. So what did Miller really create? Death. That's all mankind has been able to create is death. Only God can create life. Romans 1:19 and 20. What I've just told you now about the amino acids and proteins and life is described in Romans 1:19 and 20. Because that which is known about God is evident with them. For God made it evident. What is he saying there? He's made it, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, that is, the eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, being understood by that which was made, so without excuse. In other words, what God is telling us, his creation, what he's created, is evidence, and he's given that to everybody, that everybody knows God exists. That's what that's saying. Everybody knows God exists from his creation. He's put that in our heart. He's put it in our minds. There are no excuses, folks. You do not have an excuse for not believing God because you know God exists. Just look at the creation. Who can create a single protein? Not mankind. With all the scientific knowledge we have, we can't do it. We can't even come close to creating a cell. He's made it so evident that everybody knows there's a creator. And I use that in every debate and discussion I'm with an atheist. They know God exists. They do not have an excuse. Any of your family members who do not believe, they do not have an excuse. They know God exists. Incidentally, Romans 2 says he has put the moral law in everybody's heart so they know right from wrong, whether they acknowledge it or not. Isn't that amazing? Just a single cell, a protein, verifies Romans 1:19 and 20. So God's amazing creation and the ending. I want to talk about his creation was perfect. I'm going to show you his ending is going to be perfect too. Well, you read Revelation, it doesn't sound so much that way. But I'm going to show you something here. The theme, eighth theme of the Bible is this. Paradise created, paradise lost, paradise restored, and it all points to Jesus Christ. That's a good theme of the Bible right there. First part's to play off an old book there. But this is exactly what the Bible teaches. It's all about Jesus Christ. He's our creator, he's our savior, and he will be our judge. The beginning of everything. Genesis 1:31, a perfect beginning. How do we know it's perfect? God declared it in Genesis 1:31. He said, everything I have done is very good. And God is saying this, I saw, and I declare this good, 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 and finally, very good. A fully functional, formed universe. Perfect beginning, perfect ending. I'm going to show you a comparison here. We're going to look at the bookends here. The first book and the last book of the Bible. I'm going to show you 11 things that we lose because of the fall, and all 11 we get back in the end. Show you a comparison here. The curse is announced in Genesis 3:17 because of the fall, sin. The curse is removed in Revelation 22, verse 3. So it's back to perfect. Toil for food in Genesis 3:18 and 19 because of the fall. Abundance of food, Revelation 22:2. Death to all because of the fall, Genesis 3:19. No more death. Isn't that amazing? No more death, no more sorrows, no more pain. What a wonderful thing to hear. That is in Revelation 21, verse 4. Coats of skin because of the fall. We have to cover ourselves now. Genesis 3:21. Revelation 7:14, we're now given clean linen. Isn't that nice to have some clean linen once in a while? But we're not going to get it until the end. Tree of life is denied in Genesis 3:24. Tree of life is supplied again in the book of Revelation 22:2. Banished from paradise, Genesis 3:23. Entrance into heaven, Revelation 22:14. Redemption is promised in Genesis 3:15. Incidentally, that's the first part of the gospel right there. First promise of a Savior and victory, Genesis 3:15. It's not in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. It's Genesis 3:15. It's the first proto-gospel. Redemption is accomplished in Revelation 21, verses 2 through 4. Evil is everywhere because of the fall. Sounds like today, isn't it? Evil is excluded. Revelation 21, 20. Aren't you seeing we started perfect, and how are we going to end? Perfect. God's going to restore everything. Angels blocked the way in Genesis 3:24. Angels are going to show the way in Revelation 22:1. Man is separated from God because of sin, the fall, Genesis 3. God dwells with man, Genesis 21, verse 3. Creation is corrupted. All creation is corrupted because of the fall. And creation is restored. All things are made new and perfect again. That's who our Creator is. Colossians 1:16 and 17 tells us something about our Creator there. For by Him all things were created, both in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. Notice it covers visible and invisible. That's everything. All things have been created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. That's who our Creator is. Revelation 4:11 again. Worthy are you, our Lord and our God, to receive glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and because of your will they existed and were created. See, God creating all things is mentioned not in the book of Genesis. It's a theme throughout the Bible that God is the creator of all things. Before we have questions, we do have a sign-up sheet out there. And I'll be here for questions on any of this, anything about creation evolution between here and the service. I'm available for questions. If you have a question before we break here, I'll answer some of those if we have some time. But we do have a sign-up sheet for a brochure, a little magazine called Acts and Facts from the Institute for Creation Research. It's about 20-plus pages long, very little to no advertising, just good articles on God's creation. Amazing articles. So that's out there. And we're going to talk more about these. These are our training courses that we offer. We were here about 11, 12 years ago. We did a course called Basic Creation Training. If you missed that one, you have to come to another one here. You're just 11, 12 years late. But we do have a lot of training courses if you're interested, and you can find those on our website. Yeah.
All right, this is Sunday school.
Yes.
You just been learning some stuff. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is, if you have some questions, throw your hand up. I will come to you, and that way our folks who are watching via live stream can hear your voice asking that question. So, do we have any questions this morning? It's going to be a lot easier right now to ask questions than during the service, you know. So, if you've got some questions, now would be a good time to ask anything.
And I have questions if you don't have it.
Yeah.
You don't know how to answer mine.
Yep. Okay. I'm coming over here.
If our bodies are like Adam and Eve's, and we have cells dying and regenerating all the time, how would you respond to, was there death then before the fall if their bodies are doing what ours are?
Well, excellent question. If there were our bodies like Adam and Eve, and our cells are dying, being replaced all the time, well, how do we answer that? Was Adam and Eve happen? Well, there was some form of that occurring. We don't know to what extent, because certain things have to happen to make everything work. Like there's the second law of thermodynamics that says everything is losing available energy. Well, stars are out there, they're burning up their energy. And there's certain processes in our body that have to take place in order to make it all work. To what extent, we don't know. For instance, there's something called cell death, apoptosis. That's automatic cell death. Cells will die automatically. Was that in place? It may or may not be. We just don't know. Some of it may have come because of the fall or enhanced because of the fall. Not being there and not knowing God's mind, we can't answer it. That's the best I can do with that one. But some of it had to take place. Let me add on to that. What about eating plants? Was that death before sin? Because what happens when you root up a plant and eat it? Are you killing the plant? Well, we believe so. Well, biologically, yes, plants have life, but biblically, they do not. See, God breathed the breath of life, nephesh, into humans and animals, but not plants. Biologically, plants have life, but biblically, they do not. So that would be part of that in there, too. Great. Thank you for that question. Because we step on little microbes and things all the time.
I'm coming your way, Liam. I see that hand. This guy's a thinker. Here we go.
So basically in California, do we have like mini dragons?
In California? Well, they're only about a half inch long. And they're not just in California. We see a lot of them in California. They're around different places in the world, too. So check your pillow every time before you go to sleep. Make sure one's not under there. You up there, too. We have a question here.
Oh,
Thank you for that question. Yeah, you may have some in this state.
so wait, bed bugs or dragons? Wait, oh,
Okay, now how do we, when did we start losing the battle? You know, at her age. She's building all these cells. At some point, I started losing the battle, and I am now burning them faster than I can replace them.
Well, are we burning them fast and we replace them? Not so much. What happens is some of our cells die and cannot, in a sense, they cannot be replaced. Okay, for you biology folks, we have chromosomes in us. And as humans, it's characteristic, we have 46 chromosomes. Now, at the end of those chromosomes, there's a little thing called telomeres. Kind of like you have a shoelace, and at the end of the shoelace, you have a plastic part that keeps it from fraying. On the end of our chromosomes, that's exactly what these telomeres do. That's all we know they're for, is to keep it from coming apart. They don't code for anything, don't code for making proteins or anything else. And every time that cell replicates itself, part of those telomeres get lost. And they get shorter and shorter and shorter until that becomes a dead cell, cannot be replaced. So yes, we are losing some in that case. So the older you are, if you see somebody that's older than you, you can tell them this: my telomeres are longer than your telomeres. And you better watch out, you might get slapped. But that's part of we believe it's part of the dying process, getting older. So sooner, just as you're conceived almost, your telomeres, every time those cells replicate, are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So the whole death process starts pretty much when we're born, really, even before then, because their telomeres are getting shorter and shorter. Thank you for that. Yes?
I'm of the opinion that Adam and Eve were superhumans, and that with time, with sin, we've got less and less, so we're the way we are today due to sin. What's your opinion?
My opinion is Adam and Eve are a lot smarter than me. They had perfect brains to begin with. The things they were doing back in those days was incredible. Naming animals, building machines, and musical instruments. They were doing incredible things. They just didn't have the technology we have today. We've been corrupted due to the fall. It's not to say we're not smart, but we just have great technology. One of my studies I did in mathematics was ancient Egyptian mathematics. You'd love that. And those people understood and were using the principles of calculus. These people were very smart. You read through the Bible, the technology that they had in their brains, how to do things, was remarkable. We didn't need aliens to build the pyramids or the Stonehenge or things like that. It's not hard to figure out how they did that. They were just very smart. They knew the principles of calculus. Basically, all calculus is find the area under a curve. You just put a formula to it. And how to get those things to fit just perfectly together. So yes, I believe they were very smart. Due to the fall, we get mutations and corrupt, and we have all diseases. It doesn't mean we don't have geniuses today, because you watch some of these 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds play the piano, classical piano. There's amazing smart people out there today.
I'm going to throw a question out there as well that ties in with these past few questions that have been asked. So, we come to the lineage from Adam to Noah, and you see all of these guys that are living, 700, 800, 900 years old, and then people will say, oh, well, see, that's part of the fairy tale of the Bible, that they lived that long, and then after Noah, you see like 120 years is kind of like that's a long lifespan. So how does that factor into all of this biology?
Next question. No. Let's answer that. Yeah. Well, I already know I'm about that old. When I joined Microsoft, my boss called me older than dirt. But let me illustrate something here. Sometimes we have to accept things by faith, but we do have some possible answers there. I was at a secular university. I did a talk on creation. And they started just pounding me with questions, and I can usually answer most all their questions, whether it's science or Bible. And they get frustrated because when they ask me a question and I answer it, then I ask them a question. And they don't like that because they can't answer my questions. So finally a man stood up and he read from the Bible. He's not a believer. He read from the Bible. He read, right here, Mike, it says people live to be over 900 years old. Do you believe that? I know what he was looking for. A very technical, biological answer. But that's not what I gave him. My response to him was very simple. Yes, don't you? He wasn't expecting that. So he stopped for a moment. Then he finally said no. I said, well, why not? And his response was, it's never been observed. He did not know at that point he just lost the whole argument. He didn't know. I already knew I was in control of the whole thing. But he didn't know. He just lost. He said, it's never been observed. I asked him another question. Do you believe, knowing he's a non-believer, do you believe life originated by naturalistic processes? And he had to say yes. My next question was, have you ever observed that? And he said no, and the whole audience went silent. He just contradicted himself, didn't he? Yes. Now, yes, there were different conditions before the fall, because the people were living for, or after the fall, even all the way to the times of Noah. People were living for hundreds and hundreds of years, and 900 plus years, some people living that long. We don't do that today. And you don't want to, because you'd make a prune look nice. Atmospheric conditions are a little different. Something happened during the flood that caused things to change rapidly. Because after the flood, you see the age is doing what? Just going down to about what we are today. Well, there's possible answers, different atmospheric conditions, greater amounts of CO2. Notice what I just said there? Greater amounts of CO2, because carbon dioxide is a good thing, and we need more of it, not less, as the world's trying to convince you. The less CO2 we have, the more people are going to die, because that's plant food. We look at the vegetation, the amount of coal that we have out there, which is formed by plant vegetation. There's so much out there, we estimate that the vegetation was up to maybe 100 times more than it is today. We had better food content back there. We didn't put all kinds of chemicals in our food. And other than that, we don't know. Is our capability for living long? We have a death process, apoptosis, which is automatic cell death. Was that going on before the flood? We don't know. There's a lot of unknown things in there. But ultimately, we have to just trust on faith. We can go through all the biology and all of that. But ultimately, Hebrews 11:6, without faith, it's impossible to please God. We have to accept certain things. When we get up there and say, Adam, what was it like living 930 years? Or Noah, I understand you had to be 600 years old because you didn't have enough work experience to build an ark yet. Can you imagine that being denied a job because you're only 300 years old? We just don't know the final answer to that.
I've got two more questions because I saw hands. I saw one here, and I see that one right there. So I'm just going to come here because I'm closer, and then I'm coming over to you, buddy.
So the world that was before Noah, we have no idea the technology they had, right?
No, we don't.
It was completely erased. But we do know they came off the ark and built the Tower of Babel. We see all these ancient structures that we still don't know how they built. These people were smart. Noah was smart.
Yes.
Can you speak to any of
Well,
that?
Noah was smart, matter of fact, but he didn't know everything. God gave him the perfect dimensions to build an ark. Length-width ratio, 6:1. How would he know that? Well, he may have known it, but God told him, 6:1 length-width ratio is the perfect dimensions for floating. Built the ark, perfect dimension. The ark was not designed to go anywhere because there was nowhere to go. All it had to do was float. And it had to float under tremendous water waves possibly in there. 6:1 length-width ratio is the perfect dimensions for floating and for staying stable. We get an idea. Stonehenge is not hard to figure out how, I've been there. It's not hard to figure out how they did that. And the pyramids, they understood fulcrums and leverages and things like that very well. It took us a long time to reinvent a lot of that. And they built the pyramids the same way. Just a lot of manpower called slavery and built pyramids. And since they understood the principles of calculus, they knew how to get those things just perfectly designed together, and so it wouldn't collapse on itself. Yes, they were very smart people. And don't forget, when Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they all lived in those dark days before the flood, where every thought of their heart was evil. They witnessed what the world was like. And they understood all the technology that was going on. They got to see it all. So when they came off the ark, they still had that. Unfortunately, one of them, called Ham, made a major mistake because there was a lot of sexual sin going on there. I think he remembered some of that. That's why he looked at his father in an awkward position there. And his other two brothers turned their back so they wouldn't have to see their father. He may still remember too much stuff that was going on there. But they came off, they understood the technology, and they knew how to build things right away. So yes, how much technology we have, we don't know. They didn't have computers as far as we know. They didn't have all of that. But they understood the principles of how to build things. We build a football stadium. It lasts for 20, 25 years, and we're marveled. Then we break it down and build a new one. They built pyramids, and they're still there. Anything before the flood, we don't know if there's any structures that were pre-flood. Those pyramids all had to be post-flood.
How did the beetle you talked about know when to close the door and when to open it?
How did the beetle know when to close the door and open it? God programmed the information into it, so it automatically does that. Let me give you an idea. Every time you sneeze, you know what you do with your eyes? Close them. You don't think about it, though, do you? Because God put that information in you. You automatically close your eyes every time you sneeze. Why? Because it causes pressure on your eyeballs. And if you left your eyelids open, your eyeballs will not pop out into your soup, but it just causes a little bit of pain, pressure on them. Now I'm going to really mess you up. For those of you who didn't hear this the other day, aren't you glad you don't have to think about breathing? It's an automatic process. If you had to think about it, how many would go to sleep at night? Think about breathing when you go to sleep tonight now.
I have one. I said two, but I got a special privilege over here for one more question.
What are the flaws of carbon dating?
Okay, what are the flaws of carbon dating? Well, there's one assumption in the carbon-14, only one. Now, carbon is something, it's an atom that's in our atmosphere, and carbon combines with oxygen, and we get carbon dioxide, we get carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and we breathe it, we eat it all the time. So there's a fatal flaw in carbon-14 dating, and that is that we're in a state what's called equilibrium. Equilibrium. That is, carbon-14 is actually produced in the upper atmosphere. The bombardment of cosmic rays come down and bombard our upper atmosphere, causing collisions with atoms, which produce carbon-14. The assumption is the amount of carbon-14 that's being produced in our atmosphere is equal to the amount that's decaying over time. See, carbon-14 is not stable. Over time, it decays back into something called nitrogen. So that is the assumption, that if the amount of carbon-14 that's being produced in our atmosphere is equal to the amount that's decaying, then it's a valid dating method up to about 60,000+ years. But the fact is, Dr. Willard Libby, the founder of carbon-14, in his own book, recognized that we're over 20% out of equilibrium. It's being produced much faster than it's decaying. And we estimate that if we start with no carbon-14 in the atmosphere, it would only take about 30,000 years until we reach this equilibrium. So if we're not in equilibrium, that means the Earth can only be about less than 30,000 years old. So that's the one major assumption. It's called equilibrium. Is that good enough there? Without going into a whole lot more detail. Yeah, I want to thank you very, very much. During the service, why does it matter what we believe?
All right. We have about 15 minutes. Thank you, Mike. We have about 15 minutes between our Sunday school and the worship service, so you have a little break. There is as he mentioned, a sign-up sheet out here. If you would like to sign up for the newsletter, please just head out to that table, get yourself signed up, and you can start receiving that. But we'll get things started with our morning worship service, like I said, in about 15 minutes.
for you.